this here is my original Nintendo and Super Nintendo collection, with a handful of Game Boy games thrown there as well. These two consoles both came out before my time. The NES came out in '86, Super Nintendo 1990. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the console that I played the most of growing up was the N64, because that was the Nintendo console of my generation. But eventually I went back to check out a lot of these titles and enjoyed collecting for them as well. So I definitely played the Super Nintendo more than the NES. Probably a little bit more Game Boy than the NES, but the majority of it is just a handful of games that I put lots of time in, and the rest are just collectibles. Some real gems in each system here. There's a couple that I got lost in the move, and a couple that didn't work anymore, so this is what I'm working with now. And the majority of games that got lost were definitely Game Boy games. If you take a look at the ones I have here, starting with the one boxed copy of Donkey Kong, the classic arcade, for the Game Boy Advance. I actually more remember this game for the level in Donkey Kong 64 that required you to play this on an arcade machine. That was actually required to beat the game. And at the time, that was actually very difficult for me, but now I kind of understand the benign nature of this game, which was the debut of both Donkey Kong and Mario, and Peach, sort of. So the other Game Boy games we have these three Batman games, Batman the Animated Series. We have Batman Forever. The real game begins. The worst movie. We have Batman Return of the Joker, which they also made for the NES and Super Nintendo as well. We have The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. It's the one I probably played the most of any of the Game Boy games. But I also played a lot of Super Mario Land, the 6 coins. Both the Super Mario Land games for the Game Boy were both pretty good and on par with the regular Nintendo system games. But we also have The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages, which I didn't play as much as Link's Awakening, but still a authentic Zelda game, and it has the sister game of Zelda Oracle of Seasons as well, and I used to have that, but I don't anymore. We have Earthworm Jim Menace to the Galaxy. The Earthworm Jim series was always not my kind of humor. It just didn't jive with me, but they had some interesting platforming to it. Kind of difficult, but not too difficult. Now we have some Game Boy Advanced games, including the cartridge for Donkey Kong. We have the classic Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo, ported to the Game Boy Advance, which I feel like I would rather play on the classic Nintendo. Zelda Four Swords, which was a fun Zelda game. A Four Swords adventure for the GameCube was better, but this one was still worth a playthrough. We have Namco Museum 50th Anniversary, which has a lot of those just classic Namco games like Pac-Man and Dig Dug. Tom and Jerry, The Magic Ring. I'm surprised I've had this game for so long. I got this when I got my original Game Boy SP, and it's kind of benign, but simple and fun to play. Bionicle Matron Adventures. yeah, it speaks for itself. I feel like the Bionicle series had a lot of potential, but none of the games are particularly great, but not terrible. Shove all those games over there. Guess we'll get into the NES collection now. And we'll start off with the one boxed game that I have, which is Milon's Secret Castle. It's developed by Hudson Soft here. And according to this, it says over 3/4 million sold in Japan, which feels like false advertising because this game is not very good. And I'm sure a lot of people in Japan were not particularly crazy about it. But, yeah, I have the box, I have the original manual and original dust cover for the game. So now let's get into the loose cartridges here. We have Mario Brothers with Duck Hunt, the game that came bundled with the NES. Of course, everyone has a million copies of this, but the original Mario Brothers is unbeaten. It's a classic game, but not as good as Super Mario Brothers 3, which definitely took the original Mario Brothers after the kind of a disappointment of Super Mario Brothers 2 and brought it back in full flare. It's a really good game, one of the best on the system. This is probably the best game on the system, though. This is The Legend of Zelda, the original. It was one of the first games where you were allowed to actually save your game, and it had a menu where you could select items, and it was just a very well done game for the time. It was a way paved the way for a lot of games to follow. And of course, there's the sequel, which is a completely different game and is not nearly as good, but still has some challenge and lore to it that's fun, has good music, good graphics. And the good old gold cart, we have Metroid. This is the first Metroid game, of course. There were a number of classic characters from Nintendo's canon that were introduced for this system, including Samus, who at the end of the game reveals that she is actually a woman, which was groundbreaking for the time. Kirby's Adventure, the first Kirby game, and a very fun one. This is the only Mega Man game I have, which personally I think is the best. Mega Man 3. Mega Man 2 and 4 are also excellent, but this one is the only one I really played. We have Ninja Gaiden, the original. It's a very difficult game, but if you're up for the challenge, it's actually very fun. We have Double Dragon, which is a classic beat-em-up made by Acclaim. Double Dragon 2, to be exact. And there's two different guys you can play as, and in the end, they actually fight over the girl, so one of them has to fight the other. It's kind of the ultimate betrayal in the ending. We have Excite Bike, classic. We have Rad Racer, another Nintendo classic. This is the first Final Fantasy game, which introduced a lot of the standard mechanics in JRPGs, turn-based fighting, character modifications, you can pick your team, all of that. So it was very primitive for its time, but pretty fun. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's a very difficult game. I was never quite sure why they all were wearing the same color bandana. Yeah. We have Yoshi, and we have Yoshi's Cookie. Both of these are like puzzle games. They're not like the Yoshi games that we know, like Yoshi's Island or Yoshi's Story. But this is the game that introduced Yoshi as a character. And we have A Boy and His Blob. This is a fun game where you have like a pet blob that can turn into different things to kind of help you solve puzzles and navigate the game. I think it's an underappreciated one, but they eventually remade it. We have Metal Gear, which is the first Metal Gear game in the series. Not a very good one. It's kind of the stealth in it wasn't quite perfected back then. It's kind of cheap. It's hard to win. And Gauntlet 2, which is like the Gauntlet series where you have 4 characters that can fight a bunch of orcs together. But it's the primitive NES version of it. Classic Gradius, one of the best space shooters in the early era of video gaming. Kind of set the standard for quality. Yeah, golf. Enough said. That was actually a decent golf title for the time. The Immortal. Go through these a little faster here. We have Renegade by Taito. We have Target Renegade, which are 2 completely different games, of course, but made by Taito both. We have Solomon's Key, Techno Solomon's Key, interesting puzzle game. And Quantum Fighter, Rygar, have like a shield with a for a weapon. Karate Champ, Spelunker, we have Blaster Master, Avodox, more shooters, Top Gun, the second mission, a sequel to the other Top Gun, even though there was only one Top Gun movie. And there's the cartridge for Milon's Secret Castle. Some more of these over there. So now we have Air Fortress. Nice that all these have the end labels that I can look on. Kung Fu, just as bad as Karate Champ. We have both Wizards and Warriors and Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2, which is misleading because on the end label it only says Iron Sword, but on this one it just says Wizards and Warriors. And they got a more detailed actor to play the cover in the second game for some reason. We have Tetris and Tetris 2. This original Tetris is one of the best-selling games on the NES, surprisingly enough. We have Capcom Disney's Adventures in the Magic Kingdom. Capcom actually made a lot of Disney games for the NES. We have a bootlegged Super Sprint game by Tenjin. Comes in this obscure-looking black case that's shaped completely differently. We have Little Nemo's Dream Master. The Dream Master. It's a fun little platform game. Just give candy to monsters, animals. The Rocketeer, based off the comic character. Got some more robots. We have Robo Warrior. We have RoboCop, based off of the movie. Not a very good game. We have Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, based on the movie. Also not a very good game. We have Super Glove Ball, which is compatible with the Power Glove, which was at the time seemed like a really cool idea for the system, but really wasn't that functional. We have some skating games. We have 720 here, 720 degrees. We have Skate or Die, classic name, not a very good game. And we also have Ski or Die. So over here we have Cobra Triangle. We have Silent Service, submarine game. Monster Party. Nice stereotypical Halloween cover. We have Jaws, based off the movie, made by LGN, who's notorious for making very bad games. And it was not a very good game. We have Captain Skyhawk by Milton Bradley, the toy company. They had a big hand in making video games back in the day. We have Capcom, The Legendary Wings. All-Unser Turbo Racing. All-Unser Junior Turbo Racing by Data East. And Ferrari Grand Prix Challenge. Capcom Street Fighter 2010, The Final Fight, which of course was almost more than 13 years ago. So yeah, kind of glad our future didn't end up like that with monsters running around and someone who had to fight them. The Adventures of Bio Billy. So, Crocodile Dundee knockoff here. Batman the Video Game by Sunsoft. We have Caveman Games over here. It's yeah, very simple. Just a bunch of games, mini games. Star Tropics. Here's Deja Vu. Kind of a Dick Tracy knockoff. You have Major League Baseball by LGN. And Double Dribble, which was one of the first basketball games to actually get a decent graphics, decent quality, make it feel like basketball. So, now that we have all the NES games and Game Boy out of the way, we can move on to Super Nintendo. So why don't we start off with the box titles here, which are primarily just sports games, because I found a bunch of them just at a yard sale. Someone who was really into sports, apparently, but not that into them enough to keep the games. So we have NCAA football, 40 collectible powerhouses. According to this, they're putting us in the game. Think you're ready? Think again. We have EA Sports FIFA International Soccer. Those classic soccer graphics. What a blast. We have NBA Showdown by EA Sports. They made a lot of sports based off of EA games. Sports based off of real sports instead of kind of a fictional video game sports. It's America's Roughest Neighborhood. And we have EA Sports NHLPA Hockey 93. Yes. And all these games also have their original manuals and all of that as well. We have Ken Griffey Jr.'s Winning Run, the limited edition Air Griffey collectibles inside, which of course are never here. The Seattle Mariners. We have Madden NFL 94. Good old picture of John Madden right there on the cover. It's a heavy, heavy box for some reason. And all of these cartridges are also with the rest of them out here as well. Bill Walsh, College Football. I don't know who Bill Walsh is, but I assume he's a college football coach. So let's get those out of the way. So, this is the Super Nintendo collection. And we'll start right over here with the classics of Nintendo. We have Super Mario World, which was the release title for the system, and is one of the greatest Mario games ever made. It was, again, a step up from the original Mario games, and just took everything that was good about it and made it better, and made Yoshi a rideable character. We, of course, got his own game. This is Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. This one I played more than Super Mario World, to be honest. I think the Yoshi games are underappreciated compared to Mario, and this is the finest example of it. probably the best Yoshi game out there. And here we have Super Mario All-Stars, which is the cartridge that has the 3 Mario games from the NES and a bunch of bonus levels that are really difficult, deemed too difficult to be on the Mario games themselves. We have Donkey Kong Country 2 Diddy Kong's Quest, which is the sequel to Donkey Kong Country, which I used to have but doesn't work anymore. So, but both of these games are pretty equally matched. Donkey Kong Country is a classic, and the graphics were very state-of-the-art at the time, and this one was no different. And then, of course, there's The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which is one of the greatest video games ever made, and a game that I played a lot of for the system. It came out in '92 before I was born, so it wasn't a game that I grew up playing. I eventually acquired it and came to play it, but I didn't play it before I was really into Ocarina of Time. But yeah, it's good. Worth playing. However, this game, Super Metroid, is probably my favorite game on the Super Nintendo. It's just a really well done, very atmospheric, good music, good graphics, just a gameplay that doesn't get old or stale, and it's free roam, so you can go anywhere you want in the game, and just a great balance of fun and challenge. And now we have F-Zero. This is the Player's Choice edition, of course, makes it slightly more valuable, but F-Zero was the other launch title for the Super Nintendo alongside Super Mario World, and it's was a great way to show off the graphical capabilities of the Super Nintendo back then, as it moved really fast and had a lot of graphics that had to keep up. First in the F-Zero series. And then we have Kirby Superstar, 8 games in 1, which is kind of misleading because some of the games are just kind of more simple. They're not like actual Kirby games that existed before, but still nice to have it. We have Killer Instinct, the first Killer Instinct in the series for the Super Nintendo. In the black cart, we have Earthworm Jim 2. We have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters, which was really fun for the arcade machine, where it's kind of meant to be like a lot of those tournament fighter games, but yeah, works here too. Another game best saved for the arcade is Street Fighter 2 by Capcom, the king of fighting games. There's Castlevania 4, which is the best Castlevania on the system here. It's a shame that they never got a Symphony of the Night to play on this game, because that was a little too advanced, but this one was kind of on par with that in terms of story and challenge. There's Secret of Mana by Squaresoft. Some of these games were kind of like the spiritual successors to the game Chrono Trigger, which was an iconic JRPG for the Super Nintendo, and Secret of Mana was very similar, very fun. And the kind of spiritual successor to that is Secret of Evermore, which has different characters but is still kind of the same game, and just fun for turn-based combat. Also by Squaresoft here is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. It's just another regular Final Fantasy title in the series, not as good as 6 or 7. There's Clay Fighter by Interplay. It's the first Clay Fighter game in the series. And there's also Final Fight also made by Capcom. Very similar to Street Fighter, but kind of in its own universe. More human-like. There's the Super Game Boy, which gave people the ability to play Game Boy games on the Super Nintendo, which was pretty neat. So now we can move on to the second row here. This is Mario's Time Machine, which was an educational game and not a very fun one. This is Midway's Arcade's Greatest Hits, the Atari Collection 1. We have Pac-Man 2, The New Adventures, Jungle Strike, Wing Commander, which for the NES or Super Nintendo was not very good, but for the PC it was pretty iconic at the time. There's Gun Force, Ultraman, Bandai, Arrow the Acrobat. You have Kablooey, Bonkers by Capcom. A couple of Disney games here. We have The Jungle Book. We have The Lion King. We have Timon and Pumbaa's Jungle Games, made by Sunsoft. We got Bugs Bunny, Rabbit Rampage, Taz the Tasmanian Tiger, Tasmania. We have Animaniacs by Konami, and Scooby-Doo Mystery. So, Warner Brothers there. Over here we have The Art of Fighting. It's a 1992 Sakara. Another fighting game, more realistic. Best of the Best. Karate Championship. We have Judge Dredd. Lethal Weapon. Super Battle Tank. War in the Gulf by a Video Trek here. Stunt Race FX. Top Gear. ESPN Speed World. Some more sports games. We have Ken Griffey Jr. Win and Run. Madden 94. Madden 96. Bill Walsh College Football. NCAA Football. Soccer. Yep, FIFA International Soccer. We have NBA Showdown. Bill Lambert's Combat Basketball. NHLP Hockey 93. And Stanley Cup NHL. So that's the Super Nintendo collection here, which is still far more organized than the NES over here. But yeah, both systems I didn't collect or play as much as the N64, but I still enjoyed a handful of games for these, and I'm glad I had to have the time with them that I did. So, thanks for watching, and one day I'll finally get rid of these games, and we'll take it from there.